Welcome to Essentials of Pharmacology for Health Professions, 9th edition, Chapter 1, Consumer Safety and Drug Regulations. Please note that this will not take the place of reading the chapter. Thank you. Upon completion of these chapters, the learner should be able to explain what is meant by drug standards, discuss the historical development of pharmacology, name the first drug law passed in the United States for consumer safety, and give the year it was passed, summarize the provisions of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938 and its amendments, and interpret what is meant by USP/NF objective. Continue. Summarize the provisions of the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. Contrast the responsibilities of the FDA and DEA. Define orphan drug. Define schedules of controlled substances and differentiate between the C1 and C5 schedules. State several responsibilities you have in administering medications as a direct result of the three major drug laws described in this chapter. Congratulations on your decision to join the healthcare field. Do you know the impact that you can make on the lives of others as a healthcare professional? Do you know the positive impact you can have on your family and friends? Looking at the box, you can see some of the misconceptions and then the facts of those misconceptions. What you are looking at is part of our drug history. It goes back from ancient Egypt to today, and it gives us a pharmacology timeline how advanced ailments are being treated. Please pause the video, take a few minutes, and make sure to get acquainted with the timeline. And this is the second part of the drug history. Now you can see the complete version inside of your ebook. Please take a moment, pause the video, and get acquainted with the pharmacology timeline. Alright, let's check your knowledge on what you have learned so far. The first question is, where was the first documented proof in the use of pharmacology? Look at your choices. Pause the video. Think about it. Alrighty, let's talk about drug laws. We begin in the 1900s in the United States. Laws were passed with great regard to the dispensing of the drugs. Now, what is drug standards? Drug standards are set to assure customers that they are getting what they paid for. All preparations with the same drug name must be uniform in strength, quality, and purity. What about drug preparations? Our drug companies must not add any other additive ingredients or varying the amounts of chemicals. What about illegal drugs? Lack of enforcement of drug standard poses consumer danger. Do you agree? No controls on quality can lead to deaths from overdose. And what are the three major acts? We have 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act, 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of Amendments of 1951 and 1962. And our last one is 1970, which is our Controlled Substance Act. With the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act, the first attempt to establish consumer protection in drug and food manufacture come about, required drugs to meet the minimum standards of strength, purity, and quality. It also demanded labeling for preparation containing dangerous ingredients, and it also helped establish the United States Pharmacopoeia, which is your USP, and your National Formulary, which is your NL. The 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and amendments of 1951, 1962, and 1972 helped the FDA to establish under the Department of Health and Human Services, which is shortened for DHHS, to establish more specific regulations for preventing alterations, or better yet, tampering with any food, drugs, or cosmetics. For example, if you look at your medications, you have warning labels that is present on certain preparations, like Zyrtec can cause drowsiness, or you may see on some of it where on other medications that it may state may cause nervousness, or it could be habit forming. These are some of the things that could be on your prescription medications. As we continue with the 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and amendments of 1951, 1962, and 1972, we already know that the Food and Drug Administration was, which is the FDA, was established under the Department of Health and Human Services to enforce the provisions of the Act. But we also want to take a look at the 1972. If you look at that last bullet, the National Drug Code, NDC, directive was established. What this did was provide the FDA with a list of all the drugs that was manufactured for commercial distribution. Each drug is identified by an NDC number, which is made of 3 parts. The first part is 5 numbers, and what that does is identify the manufacturer, the company that made it. The second part, which is 4 numbers, identifies the drug itself, because each drug is identified by numbers. The third part is 2 digits, which tells you or identifies the package size. So if you look at the example, it gives you an example so you can have an idea of what it looks like. So the next time you pick up any prescriptions or get any kind of medications from a pharmacy, make sure to look for the NDC. This can also be seen in your ebook. Okay. We are now looking at a medication label for aspirin 81 milligrams. It is manufactured by Clark Pharmaceuticals. Gives you the address. So this tells you when it's expired, the product name, the product dose, what the quantity of the contents is. So it has 400 tablets. You also can look on the drug facts on the back of the label, and it tells you what it's for, the uses, the warnings, the allergy alert, alcohol warning, the recommendations during pregnancy. Make sure that we keep it out of reach of children, directions on how to take it, and any other information that is vital. You can also see this in your ebook. So what we are looking at now is the 1970 Controlled Substance Act that was established by the Drug Enforcement Administration, which is the DEA. They were sent to set tighter controls on a specific group of drugs, which basically the drugs that were being abused by our society. These drugs include depressants, stimulants, psychedelics, narcotics, and antibiotic steroids. What they did is they provided us with 5 schedules, which is like a guideline of 5 schedules, and they are designated by capital C. You have C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5. In your book, you will see a table, which is table 1-1 in the text for more information. Alright, so I'm putting a table here of the 5 schedules of the controlled substances just to give you a vision, but make sure to look inside of your ebook, and because this is very vital information and we really need to know it. So if you look at 1, you see the C1, the potential and legal limitation is high abuse potential. It's not approved for medical use in the United States, which is discussed more later, more until in chapter 20. And your examples of your substances is heroin, LSD, methamphetamine, and ecstasy. These are examples, but make sure you read these and get very familiar with them. Okay, we have additional drug legislation. Let's take a look at the 1983 Orphan Drug Act. What did that do? That gave financial incentives to develop medication for diseases that affect a small number of people and are of low probability. The Anonymous Budget Reconciliation Act, which is considered OBRA of 1990, mandated that the over-the-counter drugs be documented as part of a medical record, and the pharmacy provide drug use review and patient counseling. So if you notice now when you go to the pharmacy and you are going to start a new prescription, a lot of time you have to have a consult with the pharmacist so he can go over those items with you. Alright, so let's take a look at the next check your knowledge. That question is, which of the following ensures that customers get what they pay for? Let's pause the video for a minute, look at your choices, and let's see if you remember. Here is another check your knowledge activity. What year was the first drug law passed for consumer safety in the United States? So let's see if you remember from what you've learned so far. You will find your answers at the end of the video. Here is another check your knowledge activity. Let's see if you remember. The 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and amendments of 1951, 1962, and 1972 established which of the following? Pause the video, read your choices, and let's see if you remember. Here is another check your knowledge. Let's see if you remember. The United States Pharmacopoeia / National Formulary USP / NF is a reference for. Pause the video, look at your choices, and let's see if you can remember. Alright, so check your knowledge. Which act provided enforcement of controlling the use of additive medication by requiring restrictions and accountability? Look at your choices. Pause the video and let's see if you can remember. Check your knowledge activity. Which act provides funding for pharmaceutical companies to develop medications to treat diseases that affect only a small number of people? Look at your choices. Pause the video and let's see if you can remember. Check your knowledge. The question is, which is a legal limitation for a C2 drug? Look at your choices. Pause the video and let's see if you remember. Remember, that was in a table. The Federal Drug Administration, which is shortened for FDA. The federal FDA was established to ensure that some basic standards would be followed. Their responsibilities are overseeing testing of all proposed new drugs before they are released in the United States market, inspecting plants where foods, drugs, medical devices, or cosmetics are made, reviewing new drug applications and petitions for food additives, investigating and removing unsafe drugs from the market, and ensuring proper labeling of foods, cosmetics, and drugs. Now, let's see what the Drug Enforcement Administration, which is shortened for DEA, does. They are only concerned with our controlled substances, enforces law against drug activities, including illegal drug use, dealing, and manufacturing of them, as well as monitors needs for changing the schedules of abused drugs. Check your knowledge. Your question is, what is the responsibility of the Drug Enforcement Agency? Read your choices. Pause the video and let's see if you can remember. Healthcare professionals and the law and ethics. As a healthcare professional, you must act ethically when ordering and dispensing medication to our patients. You will have the responsibility of keeping accurate records of the medication dispensed and maintaining supply of drugs at your facilities. In addition, the following guidelines should be followed by healthcare professionals when dispensing medication, and they are as follows. Have a current drug reference source readily available at all times. Keep controlled substances locked securely or double locked, meaning placing the drugs in a locked safety box, placing the locked box in a cupboard that is also locked, which means double locked. Conceal and secure prescription pads at your office, clinic, or the facility that you are at. Keep accurate records of each controlled substance administered, received, or destroyed at your facility, and those records must be kept for at least 2 years. Alright, we continue with the healthcare professional. You also need to be responsible for keeping up to date with current news of the activities of the FDA and the DEA. Your local pharmacists are great resources. You want to establish a great working rapport, keep in contact with them, get to know them. If you work in an office, maintain a professional rapport with your pharmaceutical representatives who leave drug samples there. And just a note, while establishing a professional rapport with pharmaceutical representatives, it is equally important to be aware of the ethical dilemma that may occur when you're being given gifts, rewards, or compensated in any way of prescribing certain medications. The Sunshine Act requires reporting of compensation and gifts paid to physicians by the pharmaceutical representatives that will be at those clinics. Check your knowledge activity. Healthcare professionals are responsible for following which guideline related to medications. Look at your choices. Pause the video for a minute. That concludes the lecture for Chapter 1. Let's do a self-assessment. We're going to ask ourselves these 3 questions. What can you do to help improve your knowledge and understanding of the 5 schedules of the controlled substances? Your second question, which misconceptions and facts about drug therapy and facts about drugs that you find most surprising or interesting? 3. How do the medication labels shown in the chapter satisfy the requirements of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Acts of the 1938 and its amendments? These are some questions that you can ask yourself and see if you can answer them. These are the answers to check your knowledge activities. Read them. And if you got your answer wrong while you were reviewing, while you were answering as we were going along in the video, go back in the book and look up your answer. If you have any questions, make sure you ask me in class, email me, call me, and we can discuss it. Thank you.